Welcome everyone to Loving Ourselves, a Key to Transformation and Healing teleclass. I'm your host, Beth Terrence, and I'm really happy to be with you here this morning. It's Sunday, February 25th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, where I am in Annapolis, Maryland. And I mentioned when I shared this teleseminar coming up that it's one of my favorite topics. And I share it partly because it's February, and that's a month where we do tend to focus on love, often loving others, or romantic love. But I really feel that loving ourselves is at the heart of our experience in being able to love others and love the world and be all who we want to be. And I'm going to share a lot more about that as we go on. So I wanted to open with a quote by Sharon Salzberg, who is a teacher of mindfulness and particularly loving kindness meditation, and has really inspired me in a lot of ways. She says, "Loving ourselves opens us to truly knowing ourselves as part of the matrix of existence, inextricably connected to the boundlessness of life. When we see that we are far bigger than the person that is delineated by family or cultural expectations, we realize we're capable of so much more than we usually dare to imagine." And I think that just feels like the essence of what I'd like this time to be about. So I just wanted to also share a little bit about me in case there are some folks who've come to some of my classes and workshops before and some who are new. And I am a shaman, a holistic healer and practitioner and recovery coach. I also do a lot of writing about transformation and healing. And I guess one of the things that I wanted to share, particularly related to this topic, was that, in my personal journey of healing and in my work over the last 20 plus years, whether it's in the realm of teaching meditation and mindfulness or body energy therapies and shamanic healing, or spiritual explorations, I've really found that this concept of loving ourselves, the experience of loving ourselves, is at the heart of it all. And so for me, it's become a foundational practice in all that I do in my life, in my work, in the message I wish to share to others. And that wasn't always easy thing for me to do, and it still can be challenging. And so I kind of wanted to share today about some ways to do that, and also some of the challenges, and just give you maybe a framework of some tools that you can begin to work with. Maybe you're already working with it, but maybe you want to explore deepening into that a little bit more as well. So I'd like to start with just a short, I'll usually begin with a settling in practice. And so with our focus, I'm going to invite you, if you're sitting on a chair, you can have your feet flat on the floor, your spine straight but not tense. You're welcome to sit on the floor, or even if you want to lay down. When we do a few experiential practices during the call, I welcome you to do that. Part of loving ourselves and being compassionate with ourselves is taking care of ourselves. And so, allowing your body to be comfortable supports that, especially, in this space. So, and then I'll invite you to gently close your eyes and take a few deeper breaths, breathing in for a count of 5 and out for a count of 5. Just allowing your body and your mind to begin to slow down, to unwind. Noticing if you feel any tension in your body, just allowing the next few breaths to simply wash over those areas, beginning to loosen or melt away those tensions. And if you notice any busyness in your mind, any thoughts or worries of the day, simply letting that go. Like a cloud passing by in the sky, you notice it and it simply drifts away. And if you haven't already, letting your breath come back to its own natural rhythm, wherever it feels to rest in this moment. Still feeling your breath entering your body and leaving your body. And as you allow that breath to become an anchor for this moment, I'm going to invite you to bring that breath and awareness into your heart center, right in the center of your chest, the center of love, compassion, gentleness for yourself and for others. And just notice how it feels to connect with the energy of your heart. Sometimes it feels open and spacious. Sometimes you feel some resistance or constriction. It's just about noticing as you begin to connect there. Then I'm going to invite you to put a hand right on your heart, right in the center of your chest. Just make that connection a little more consciously with your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, your spiritual body. Just bringing all of you, all parts of you, into connection and awareness with your heart center. And as you breathe there for a few moments, I'm going to invite you to just listen. Just breathing in and going a little deeper with the next few breaths into the center of your heart, the heart of your heart, to that very still place that exists deep within your heart center. So I'll pause for a moment and just invite you to feel your heart, to ask your heart what it wants you to know in this moment. And as you listen, also just gently inquire if from that space of heart-centeredness there's a change or transformation that is feeling important for you right now, or feeling that it's bubbling up from deep within that heart space. Is there something you need to give attention to in terms of transformation or healing in your life? Just invite that awareness to come from this deep space of the heart. And sometimes as we ask the questions, the answer comes quickly in terms of a feeling, an image, a word. Sometimes as we ask, we are inviting the question into our awareness, into our being. And so it may come later, planting a seed. And as we begin to come back together, just take a moment to really honor yourself, honor your heart, whatever it may be holding in this moment. And honoring yourself for taking the time to connect, to listen, and to go deeper within yourself. And so you may wish to take a few deeper breaths. You can begin to open your eyes, move your body a little bit. And just as you're coming back in your own timing, you may, particularly if you're listening to the recording, wish to pause and just jot some notes down or journal about your experience or any awareness that came. So I always invite you to do that during or later. So, see, I wanted to share something here, actually. So I mentioned about my core practices and being really centered around loving ourselves and compassion, both for ourselves and others. And so one of the main practices I work with is metta, or loving kindness meditation. And some folks have joined me before in May for May is for Metta, which is a 31-day loving kindness practice that I lead each year, and will be coming up this May. So I'll invite you to join me then. I wanted to share this quote by the Buddha. You can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of our love and affection than you are yourself. And that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. So I guess the first question I just wanted to pose as we're exploring, as I was thinking about just my journey with loving ourselves, is why is it so hard? Because it seems like it should be such a simple thing. And yet sometimes taking that time to practice loving ourselves and compassionate self-care and nurturing is really hard. And so, as the Buddha shared, that's, one of the most important foundational things we could do. And in the realm of the metta or loving kindness practices, and in other traditions, I think I live in the United States and in more Western culture, we're not necessarily taught to love ourselves first. I know that wasn't my experience. It's more thought to love everybody else first. Then it might even be selfish to love ourselves. Whereas in the Buddhist tradition and other cultures, it's often thought that in order to have that foundation to love ourselves and have compassion for others, we really need to have that for ourselves first. And so, so depending on, again, your background, where you live in the world, where you come from, it may be more challenging or less challenging, depending on your personal life experiences, the type of family you grew up, the culture. It'll vary for each person, but I think also we live in a very busy modern world, and so having time to practice, period, can be a challenge. And so loving ourselves isn't always at the top of our list, and it needs to be. I think it really does need to be. And just along the lines of the title of this talk, Loving Ourselves, the Key to Transformation and Healing, what I've found for myself and many people I've worked with and studied with over the years, it is like the key that you put in the lock. And when you work on this, so many other things happen and so many beautiful changes can happen. So I touched on the busyness of our world, and so I wanted to go there next. In 2003, 2004, where I was already doing, my holistic practice and had done a lot of spiritual exploration and was healing, working really on healing some trauma from my childhood and earlier years. I came to enter into a program called Brasilia University of the Heart with a wonderful teacher, Maria Lucia. And I thought I'd done a lot of work around my heart and love and kindness and compassion for myself. And as I dove into this year-long program, it really challenged me and to slow down. And that was probably, I learned so much that year, but one of the biggest things that I learned was that to enter into the space of the heart, we really need to be in a place of slowing down. The mind is very, very busy. It moves very, very fast. And as we try to move down and enter into the space of our heart, which is where we really are able to cultivate that love and compassion for ourselves, slowing down is so important. And that's an obstacle because in the world we live in, it's very fast-paced, and there's, we've got technology, we've got our full schedules, and so creating the time and space to practice and make loving ourselves a practice, and also just slowing our systems down on all levels, body, mind, emotion, spirit, is another area that can be a challenge, and why it's hard to practice and cultivate this aspect of ourselves. So I really wanted to touch on those things. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it as we go along. And let's see. Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for joining me. So I do have folks muted just as I'm doing the talk, and then maybe towards the end we'll open it up a little bit. So let's see. So I touched on those two things, and again, particularly just want to focus on, I mentioned body, mind, emotion, spirit, and I think loving ourselves, we can think of it as emotional, because of the heart and the feelings, but really that it is also something we need to cultivate on all levels, body, mind, emotion, and spirit. And as I share some different ideas and practices, I'll touch a little bit more on that. Okay, and let's see, I had another quote I wanted to share. Got a few, actually. Yeah. Okay, yes, this is the one I want to share now. There are two basic motivating forces, fear and love. When we're afraid, we pull back from life. When we're in love, we open to all that life has to offer with passion, excitement, and acceptance. We need to learn to love ourselves first in all our glory and imperfections. We cannot love ourselves. We cannot fully open to our ability to love others or our potential to create. Evolution and all hopes for a better world rest in the fearlessness and open-hearted vision of people who embrace life. And that quote is by John Lennon. And I love that quote. And I think that was the one other thing I wanted to just add. Why now? And I mentioned is February, and I'd like to talk about this topic in February. But we know we're living in a world where really there's a lot of chaos and challenge. And so I do feel like loving ourselves, again, is at the core of our own transformation and healing, our relationships, and our world. And so it allows us to begin to move from a place of compassion and kindness rather than reaction. And so it just felt even more important at this time, and in an ongoing way. And I know so many of us, I'm sure, who are here are really focused on creating change in our, again, in our own lives and our relationships, our communities, and our world as a whole. So I do see this as a really foundational tool as well. So I have an article I wrote a few years ago, and some of it did stem from that year I mentioned in University of the Heart. It's hard to believe that was 15 years ago. But this has these practices that I really cultivated then, again, have become a core foundation in my personal journey and in my work with others. And so I want to touch on these 7 ways to cultivate love and compassion for yourself. And the first one is to be still. And we did that a little bit in the settling in practice. And again, just as a turtle pulls into its shell when it needs to feel safe or when it needs to kind of re-energize itself, we need to pull inside sometimes and be still, really to connect with ourselves more deeply, sometimes to rest, but also to connect with ourselves. And again, our head, busy, 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 busy. I mean, how many thoughts, are just rapid firing all the time. And that's what our brain does. That's its job. So we don't, we need that to function in the world in a lot of ways. But we also need to slow it down and come into this space of the heart. And so being still is a very powerful way to do that. And that can be with meditation or, practice or mindfulness. When we did the opening practice, just kind of tuning in to your heart center and your breath, putting your hand on your heart and just laying down this practice that I started during that year I've talked about. So simple, just laying down on the couch or the floor or sitting, whatever's comfortable for you, breathing into that heart center, putting your hand on your heart, and just being, and for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or longer. And it seems hard sometimes to do that, but it's very powerful. So I hope that you have a practice of stillness. And again, that can come through a meditation practice or other contemplative practice. But really, that's a key. I think that's just a key to transformation and healing and living as a human being on earth at this time, regardless of whatever change we might want to create, just to live in balance and peace in some way. So I encourage you to work with the just simple hand on your heart and stillness and tuning into what your heart wants you to hear, which we did. And if you missed it, you can replay the video to just experience that a little bit. But also, again, explore other practices that help you to be still. Journaling is another practice, and I find that really powerful to get to know oneself. And sometimes, again, I think writing, especially, we can type and write, and we can write and write. There is something that happens when you put pen to paper, and I think it does naturally slow us down again. So I do sometimes encourage journaling on paper in a journal, but everybody's different, so find what works for you. But taking some time to really listen again to what you're feeling and listen to your heart. So if you even just did that as a meditation or practice, what did you hear? What does your heart want you to know? And it's so easy to sort of have that come in and then let it go. Because again, we get busy and we move on to our next thing. And pick up our phone or, get on the computer and then it's gone. So staying connected is journaling, I think, really can help us to connect and stay connected. I did invite you to maybe have a notebook or some paper here as we move into a little further along. I might suggest a practice, but I think that might be homework today. So because of timing and so we'll see. I will share this article that I mentioned with you via email after the call. So, but some things to journal. So one thing that I really like to do as someone who, again, has tended to be very in my mind, and also for many, many years really was not in touch with my feelings and my heart, what was on my heart. And part of that was through my life experiences, also dealing with addiction and, being in a framework in my life where I was just mostly trying to numb myself out from pain, physical pain, emotional pain. It was really hard initially for me to feel my feelings and connect with my heart. And so I've come a long way, but I find journaling to be really helpful with that. And so one thing I do regularly, and it's a daily practice for me, but I also do what I call on-the-spot journaling sometimes in the middle of the day when something's happening, is just do a feelings inventory. And it's just a list of everything I'm feeling, if it's about a certain situation or relationship, challenge, or just, as part of my evening journaling before I go to bed, to just kind of let that move through. And also it's listening to my heart and what's on my heart, and allowing it rather than saying, no, I don't want to hear that, pushing that away. Because that is a tendency I know I've had for a lot of my life, and I'm sure other folks have as well. So, and then creating, positivity, so positive message. I'm going to touch on affirmations in our next piece, but it can be just journaling free form too. Just again, I like to do a list for the feelings, but it might be just free writing what you're feeling or what's going on. Is a really powerful way of, again, it's kind of like we're waiting in, we become still, we're listening. And then as, journaling is a way to kind of just really receive some of that, maybe a little more, I use the word concretize it. And I don't think that's a real word, but it's my real word. And so when something's sort of in our mind, in our awareness, it's sort of ethereal, but then when we write it down, we're really capturing it and it becomes more real. And that's one of the big obstacles. I do a lot of work with writing and journaling, and leading workshops on that related to recovery and transformation. And it's part of why it's so hard for people sometimes, is that because when you write it down, it becomes more real than when it's just sort of inside there. So I do encourage you to explore that. And then, connected to that are affirmations. And affirmations, are used in a lot of different ways. We hear about them a lot today, and really tend to focus on cultivating a positive quality or energy or change in our life. So they are a tool for transformation and healing in and of themselves. And affirmation means to make firm. So we are, again, trying to really create a foundation that maybe is different than the one we've experienced. So with this topic of loving ourselves, I've found working with affirmations to be really powerful. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. It can be writing them repetitively. It can be putting them on Post-its on your, mirror in your bathroom, your dashboard in your car. One of the things that I've done in the past that I find really powerful is to make a recording of myself saying these affirmations and then listening to it over and over. And but there's two parts of affirmations, and this I really like to stress, both in terms of what happens when you work with them, and like sort of the hidden power of working with affirmations that doesn't always get touched on. So, and for me, you can create your own affirmations. I think that's one of the best things to do. Around this topic, I like to work with I love and approve of myself. I love myself unconditionally. Maybe I'm loved and lovable. I love myself simply. And, work with those types of affirmations. So again, that's creating that positive energy. It's an alchemical process, and we talk about energy and energy healing a lot. And so, the ancient alchemists turned lead into gold. And that's kind of what we're doing with affirmations. We're taking we're working to take, a part of ourselves, maybe a shadow part or a limiting part that's sort of holding limiting patterns, feelings, and beliefs, maybe about not being good enough or worthy of love, or, those are the two ones that come to mind right now. I'm going to get some others as we're going through this. Selfish for wanting to love ourselves, all these things. And so there is this, I'm going to say, alchemical process that's happening. We are bringing in this positive energy. I love and approve of myself. And as that's coming into our being on all levels, it's stirring up everything inside of us that's not that. That's why affirmations are so powerful. Most of the time, I hear people focus on that positive. And sometimes it really works, and it really works initially, and then they stop, or I don't know, something happens and it kind of backfires, and that's what's supposed to happen, because it's stirring up all this inside of us that's not that. And so that's the gift of affirmations, to work with what's inside of us, to use the energy of the affirmation to begin to transform, to begin to stir and loosen that within ourselves. But other tools are needed often to go deeper and to begin to clear and transmute some of those limiting and very old sometimes feelings, patterns, and beliefs. So kind of that's connected to me to journaling, because a really powerful practice, which I will, I don't think we'll pause to do that right now, but I'm going to, kind of give the instruction and then offer it as a homework. And I won't check that you did it, but I think you'll really find it a good experience. But I'll send that in the email with the article, is to pick the affirmation. And again, I'll give a few suggestions. Perhaps I love and approve of myself. And then have a piece of paper. I actually have a sheet for this, so maybe I'll share that with you. And then you write that affirmation repetitively, not speed writing, just, so that you're kind of feeling it each time. And notice what comes up each time you do it. And sometimes it's like, yes, I love and approve of myself. The positive comes up. So if you do this, do it more than once. But then sometimes you get halfway down the page and all of a sudden it's like, that doesn't feel true. Who am I to love myself? I'm really not worthy of loving myself or being loved. So what you do is each time, whether it's positive or, I don't like the word negative so much personally, maybe sort of resisting that positive affirmation, just turn your page over and just write whatever comes up. And just, then return to the next line of affirmation, and then, you might write a few and nothing comes up. this is a really powerful practice, and one that has really helped me, and I share in almost all my programs and workshops. So I'm happy to share it with you. And again, it's showing you the practice itself may not be what resolves everything that you need to resolve, but it's going to show you, it's going to unearth for you where your inner work lies, and particularly your inner work around loving yourself. So I really encourage you to explore that a little bit later on your own. Today, I don't know where everybody is, but it's a perfectly cloudy, kind of rainy afternoon here in Maryland to take some time to do some journaling and affirmation exploration. Okay, and another piece of that is, which I touched on, is recognizing critical self messages, which many of us have. I think most people have, some more than others. I've kind of moved through life with a very strong inner critic, and that's been a big part of my process in working on that. And so, again, the journaling, the affirmations, and taking the time to slow down and listen often helps us, because for years and years for myself, I know I didn't even know I was that critical of myself. It was just part of who I was. And so in the process of kind of unwinding, and in holistic healing, a lot of holistic healing, we talk about being like an onion, and an onion has a lot of layers, and so do we. As we peel away each layer, another layer emerges. And so for me, that was something, as I worked through, began to see more clearly, and have worked on in a variety of ways, but loving ourselves has been a big part of that. But in order to do that, I need to see it and to know it and to uncover it. And so beginning to listen to those critical self messages, and that again, I think does come through slowing down. The stillness and that process can really help with that. And then working perhaps with the affirmations or different practices. And we're going to share one or two more practices before we finish the time today. So related to kind of what I've been talking about is to learn to feel more fully and express emotions constructively. So I mentioned for myself, I just recently wrote an essay, and actually kind of a performance piece called From Numbness to Oneness, Recovering Body, Mind, and Soul. And so for many people, we either maybe don't feel our feelings, or, numbed out, or just not been in touch with feelings for a variety of reasons in terms of our life experiences. Sometimes we have had trauma in our lives. We tend to shut down our emotions. And the other side of that is sometimes we, are we're either unable to express our emotions, or we express them in ways that are maybe not healthy in terms of, exploding, and that was a pattern for me for many years. The wall of I'm okay, everything's great, facade, cool man. And then, just that, things would build and build and build inside of me that I wasn't even really aware of. And then kapow. And then feeling guilt and shame and that inner critic taking over. So learning to really listen and hear and be able to feel my feelings and then begin to express them in healthy ways. And again, sometimes that's with oneself, be creating that safety with oneself. Sometimes it's getting support from a coach or a counselor or friend, or support group. So, we're not alone in this. Loving ourselves is about ourselves, but I think also getting support sometimes around that is really important. So, but this is kind of key, because we tend to, if we have the tendency to push our feelings aside, maybe, again, sometimes we've learned, my feelings aren't as important as, someone else in my family or, someone I work with or a friend. And if I know this is, I'll just share for myself. If and I don't know if this was because of kind of where I was coming from or not, but sometimes I didn't have maybe that strong a feeling. So if someone else had a stronger feeling, I would say, well, they feel strongly about this, so I'm not going to worry about it or whatever. So I think sometimes it comes from that too. But it's also, every time we kind of shut that down, we're shutting down a part of ourselves, and we're not allowing our whole self to be in the world. And we want to create the life that we desire and the changes and transformation we desire. But if we're putting a part of ourselves aside, it's very difficult to do that. So. And also sometimes I think that's where we end up repeating the same patterns over and over again. So really, again, learning to listen to our feelings and begin to express them. And I think sometimes it's with ourselves. So another practice that is really powerful that I've done, and I'm sure other folks have worked with it, is mirror work. I first learned about it through Louise Hay, who has some wonderful books and teachings and on healing your life. You can heal your life, and there's many. And if you Google, actually I'll send a link for one of her YouTubes about the mirror work, because it's just so powerful. And again, it can be similar to working with affirmations. You can use your affirmations as you're looking in the mirror with yourself, but it's a place to begin to talk about your feelings with yourself. And there's something about looking yourself in the eye that is just so powerful. And there's an opening that can come from that. So I really encourage you to explore that. And most of all, just be willing to listen to your feelings, whether it's that feelings inventory or mirror work. Take the time to do that rather than say that's not so important, or and sometimes we can't do it in the moment. Sometimes we're in a meeting or I don't know, at an event or work, and feelings start to come up, and we can't necessarily work with them in that moment, but come back to it. Make sure that you take the time to look at what that is and what it's about, and honor it, because it's a part of you and it's a part of loving ourselves. Consistency. Actually, you know what? Before we go to consistency, let's do a practice. I've been talking a lot, and I think this fits with what I was just talking about. So this practice I call it a self-empowerment exercise, but it is focused on loving and accepting ourselves and what we're feeling, and even including, a person or a situation. So I'm going to invite you to find a comfortable position. Again, you could be sitting. If you prefer to lay down, that's fine. Make yourself comfortable, and again, part of loving ourselves is being comforting and nurturing to ourselves. And so find that comfortable position. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to share, this is a practice that can be used to work with a variety of issues and patterns arising in our life, particularly when we do have difficult feelings coming up around a situation or conflict. It's the intention of it's to move into a place of love and acceptance for all aspects of ourselves, and for any what's arising in anyone or anything that's involved in the situation. So, and so it's focused around the energy of heart and love. So So once you find that comfortable position, I'm going to invite you to just think about a situation that's happening maybe in your life right now that you're just feeling some difficulty with. It could be with a specific person. It could be, an overall situation or challenge that you're having. And just kind of, you can gently close your eyes if you haven't already sometimes, just to kind of imagine that. It's a little easier with your eyes closed. And just describe the situation in your mind. And just notice any feelings of conflict that come up, internal or external, as you think about that situation or experience. Any critical voices that you might feel. Any beliefs or patterns that are connected to it. And then begin to focus your awareness on how you're feeling as you think about this. You're just thinking about this. It's amazing how much we feel when we just think about a situation or experience, let alone when we're actually in it. So notice what feelings come up. Notice if you can feel the energy or vibration in those feelings. Sometimes you even notice that in a particular area of your body or your being. And are you willing to just stay with that? To just stay with the feeling and allow it to just be the way it is? No, you don't need to change it. You're just feeling it. Just allowing it. Accepting it. And can you feel love or compassion for the feeling or feelings that have come up? Are you willing to receive support in feeling love for the feeling? And can you feel the support coming in? Can you allow and feel support come in? Are you willing to accept the purposefulness of this experience or situation, even if you don't understand what the purpose is at this time? Are you willing to let go of your interpretation of this situation as being bad or wrong? Can you let that go? If there's someone else involved in the situation that causes your inner critic to become active, can you accept that you attracted them into your life to support you in reclaiming your power and loving yourself more deeply? And can you see and feel the perfection of this experience or situation just for the way it is? For some reason, it's here and you're here. It's allowing you to open to yourself more deeply. And so for a few moments, really do that. Allow yourself to feel the essence of who you are. Connect to the loving essence of your true self. If it's helpful, you can put your hand on your heart. And just allow your heart to open and this feeling of love to expand in you. And when the love is expanded sufficiently, just let it embrace any difficult feelings that may still be around the situation or experience. Let it embrace your inner critic and anyone who's involved in this experience. Most of all, yourself. Allow yourself to really just be enveloped in your true essence of love and compassion. And feel love for yourself, feeling all of this love and all the power contained in this love. And knowing that power is in you, within you, and is you. And really taking a moment there, connecting to your heart to celebrate this love and the essence of who you are. And knowing you can do this in each and any moment. And when you're ready, you can begin to come back. Just take a few deeper breaths, open your eyes. If you need to stretch your body a little bit. Going to just give you a moment to do that. If you're listening later to the recording, you might want to pause and again, just take a few moments to journal any notes or reflections that came about. I think whenever you do a practice, that's really a good thing to do because sometimes we forget as things go on. And again, we're working on part of loving ourselves is opening to and listening to ourselves. And so, taking that time is really an important part of that process. So I had just a few more of the 7 ways that I mentioned. I think we did 4. Just want to touch on the last 3 briefly before we finish for today. And so the next one is consistency. And, for some people, this is more challenging than others. It's been challenging for me in a lot of ways, and I've created a lot of consistency in my life, and there's still some ways it's a challenge. But if we think about relationships, just building a relationship with someone, a new person, whether it's, a romantic partner or friendship, consistency is a part of that. If we're going to build a healthy relationship, and if we're going to build trust with a person, there has to be some consistency in terms of our connecting, showing up, knowing that person's there for us, or we're there for that person. And, I think you know what I mean, because we have the friends who we know they're there, and we, no matter what, we have that close connection with, and there's maybe some where, they wouldn't be the first person that we called, or maybe for coffee, but not when we're in a crisis or really needing some support. So think about that, and then think about your relationship with yourself. Sometimes we talk about being our own best friend, but in terms of loving ourselves and this, idea of cultivating that, and particularly, I connected the two, loving ourselves, a key to transformation and healing, because, we do, as human beings, I believe we are evolving and we want to create change in our lives, on a personal level, on a collective level. And so, as I mentioned, and our whole time together here is about really loving ourselves being a key into that lock. But do we create consistency with ourselves? Do we show up for ourselves? And sometimes just thinking about a friend. Do we show up for ourselves in the same way we do for our friends or our family? What do we do to care for ourselves? Are we willing to take the time to be still, to listen to our feelings, to create, we're basically creating connection and safety within when we do that. So consistency is a part of that. And when I say that, I'm going to connect that to the next key, which is be gentle and loving with yourself. Because I know from my experience, I'm someone who my consistency came from rigid, harsh self-discipline in the past, if it came at all. It either didn't come, or, it was like the hammer to make it happen. And so being harsh with ourselves is not loving. It doesn't cultivate love and compassion. And so, learning to create what I learned this term from Sherry Huber, who's a Zen teacher, has a wonderful book, actually, I highly recommend, called Compassionate. I might not be getting the title right now. Compassionate Self-Discipline. Making Change for Good is the full title, the heading title, and then Cultivating Compassionate Self-Discipline. I highly recommend that. I'll send it out in the email as well. And so coming to consistency with compassion and gentleness for ourselves, that's a key. And that, I think, again, from my personal experience and just the culture we live in, that's not usually how we come to, consistency and discipline. So that's a challenge. But part of that consistency and gentleness is how we create safety for ourselves and within ourselves. And I know from my own experience and many people who I interact with, that's not where we came from through childhood experiences and even adult experiences. And so creating that place of safety within is so important. And it's such an important part of loving ourselves. And so I really encourage you to just explore that. Explore how you can be more consistent with yourself and connecting with yourself through compassion and compassionate self-discipline. So one more key, and then I'll close with just a short loving kindness practice. I think we touched on a lot today. So the last piece of this is something called Zen time, and I learned about this through a number of my teachers, but one was Dr. Eric Love, who I studied the Bach flowers remedies with back in the late 90s. And he taught me so much about healing overall, but the inner child, particularly, and loving ourselves and healing trauma. And so Zen time, which some people just call playtime, is about, really creating that space where you live in, where you can play. And that can be meaning play, like, I don't know, I used to like to go to the park and sit on the swing, or color, with crayons. I know people are really into mandalas now. Sometimes I think something free form is, think about, when you were a kid, what were some of the things you loved to do, maybe? And maybe some of the things you'd love to do today. And creating some space, because again, we live in like a busy world. We're plugged in all the time. Sometimes we work long hours. So there's not that time, it could be like, what? Like, well, when am I going to have time to go play? But it's one of the most healing things we can do for ourselves in terms of creating connection, tuning in, listening to what's on our heart and inside of ourselves, and creating change and healing. And a little Zen time goes a long way. That's been my experience. Because we're connecting with that child part of ourselves, and the openness and the curiosity, and in that, children are very flexible, usually more open to change and different experiences and things. So take some time to explore that. And for me, I have to share, because I can be a doer, and so I could decide, my Zen time is going to be, painting or coloring or, whatever. Sometimes Zen time, especially, being a grown-up and having a busy schedule and things to do, for me became nothing on my schedule. I just, decide I have an hour for Zen time. And I even, at a certain point in time when I was really working on transforming some of my old or limiting patterns and beliefs, and how I was living, and particularly moving from the strong inner critic to a place of kindness and compassion for myself, I would make that even more like a half a day, or a day once in a while, maybe once a month, Zen time. Just get up and not even know what I was going to do that day. And that is, for me, that was really healing. And I know just little bits of that can really help. So having that space. So as I mentioned, I'm going to share that 7 ways to cultivate love and compassion for yourself article with everybody who registered. And I wanted to just do a little loving kindness practice to close. And as I mentioned, May is for Metta will be coming up in May, from May 1st to 31st. And it's 31 days of loving kindness exploration that I lead once a year. And so I'll invite you as it gets closer to that. But for me, this practice is one of my foundational practices, and it does originate from the Buddhist tradition, but has really been adapted to the Western world. And there's a lot of research on loving kindness meditation and its many benefits on all levels: body, mind, emotion, spirit, like in physical, like just really helping, reduce anxiety and depression, boosting the immune system, in terms of the emotions, having more clarity and focus, the mind, clarity, focus, emotions, feeling more positive, better self-confidence, and then in terms of spiritual aspect of ourselves, feeling connected to the greater whole. So I love to share it, and it really, as we began, I talked about how in the Buddhist culture and other indigenous cultures as well, the idea that we need to love ourselves as the foundation for loving others and feeling connected is key. And so I hope this time has inspired you to do that in some ways. And so we'll close with this short practice just for ourselves for today. So I'll invite you to close your eyes and finding that comfortable position once again. And what I'd like you to do is just imagine yourself sitting in the center of a circle and begin to invite some people or beings into your circle who are all loving beings, people you really feel a sense of deep, unconditional love and compassion from. So this can be real people like maybe a grandparent or a mentor, family member, a good friend. It can also be universal beings like Buddha or Jesus or Mother Teresa, whom you feel really embody loving kindness and compassion. And just begin to fill your circle or surround yourself with these loving beings. If for some reason there's anyone you've invited in who you have mixed feelings about, and you notice that, you can send them out and know there's another time and a place to work with them. But for now, you just want beings that you feel a sense of unconditional love and compassion flowing from them to you. And sometimes we can even include animals in our lives, our dogs or cats or other pets. They bring that love so easily to us. And as you sit there, just really breathing, beginning to breathe in the love and compassion that comes from all these beings, first into your heart center in the center of your chest. As you breathe in, letting it begin to flow into your whole body, your whole being. And as you breathe out, really feeling it surround and envelop you. And on each in-breath, just breathing in all of that love, that compassion, that kindness. Letting it flow to every atom and cell. To your body, mind, emotion, spirit. And as you breathe out, really feeling it totally surrounding you. Feeling your whole circle filled with this energy. As you breathe in this time, really feeling the love and compassion fill you from head to toe. Even beyond your body, to your energy body. And as you breathe out, just feeling it's totally surrounding you. You're enveloped, so almost inwardly and outwardly. There's no separation. You just are in this moment, this energy of compassion, of love, kindness, gentleness. And you're supported and nurtured and nourished by these loving beings in your life. And in that place, I'll just invite you to repeat a few of the metta or loving kindness phrases to yourself. May I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I know the beauty of my own true nature. May I love myself unconditionally. May I embody compassion and kindness in the world and in my life. Just really feeling yourself bathing in that energy of loving kindness and compassion. It comes from your loving beings, but really comes from you, from deep within the center of your heart. That's the essence of who you are. Knowing that you've awakened it more deeply in this moment, and that you can connect with it in each and every moment, no matter what's happening in your life, in the world. That you have this ability to connect and to cultivate love and compassion for yourself. So just take a few moments to come back. You can take some deeper breaths, open your eyes, connect. Stretch a little bit. And again, you might like to journal a little bit after the practice. Once we're done, or pause. I had two more quotes I wanted to share as we close, and just want to thank those who are with me here today and those who will be listening to the replay. And I just love being able to share on this topic. It's, as I mentioned, just a big part of my journey personally and my work with others, and it's always a joy to be able to share it. And I love hearing from people, just even, just being reminded, of how important this is. So, and that's part of why I do this for myself. They say, teach what you need to learn. So I'm still on this journey myself. And so part of why I like to share about it is because it helps me in deepening as well. So I thank you all for being part of that. And I hope it does inspire you to go deeper into loving yourself. And so I'd like to share two quotes. One is by Rumi, a Sufi poet. He says, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. And I hope I've shared some tools that may help with that today. And then the last quote is by Lucille Ball. She says, love yourself first, and everything else falls into line. You really have to love yourself to get anything done in this world. And so I'll just invite you to carry that with you, and hopefully you've gotten some keys today that can help with cultivating love and kindness for yourself and using it as a key for transformation and healing. And I look forward to exploring with you more. And as I mentioned, I will follow up with the article I shared from today, and some tools that you can work with, and keep you informed of some other programs I have coming up, including May is for Metta in May. So have a beautiful day, and in the spirit of my teachers, I'll say to you, Tashida Le, which means I honor the greatness within you. Have a beautiful day.